Hello dear viewers, we are in the List gallery in the city with name г.Хабаровск, and today we are going to talk about such an amazing technique as encaustic. I have been doing photography for a long time. Once I saw in a Facebook news feed how an artist from Australia created a painting with a gas burner. The colors were shimmering, the painting was fluid and amazingly beautiful. Some time later, the page caught my eye again. I saw a new work. This artist was again working with a gas burner, and I thought, I see it for the second time, so it is a sign from above. I noticed that it was an encaustic technique. I became interested in the encaustic technique. I was given a book that told about the research of artists in the 30s of the last century, how they restored this technique. I did not take these recipes. I started by using appropriate materials. For example, I used home candles with an unknown quality of wax. I started melting these candles. At first, I worked with a small format of artworks. I felt that I was very interested in it. I started to get success. I built up my experience by intuition, and I watched workshops by other artists on one of the YouTube channels, where artists from Europe, America, Australia demonstrate how they work with art materials. It was difficult because it is impossible to buy in our city ready-to-use art materials with which you can work in the encaustic technique. All the paints that I use now are made by myself. The most important component of paint is its base, medium. It must be made of natural wax and dama resin. It's the same sort of resin that grows on trees. It is necessary to mix pieces of dama resin with wax. You get a hot mass like this. And then I add other components. Everything I know now about encaustic was achieved through my own research of suitable materials for the work. The first thing is to choose a suitable surface for the basis. It must be a hard surface. Canvases are not suitable. Preferably, it should be a board or plywood or dense cardboard. This work was started on a canvas, which was then fixed with a solid base, cardboard. This canvas already has a beginning on it, which I will build off of. It's just spots of paint. This oil painting will be the sketch for the encaustic. I've covered it with a layer of wax. You can see that because this surface is matted. This surface is very pleasant to the touch. What is encaustic? It's a Greek word that means to burn. I work with heated wax, which I will apply layer by layer, heating each layer with a gas burner. Gas torches will be different. You can compare them to a brush. There are wide brushes, and there are small brushes for delicate work. And there are hair dryers, which builders use to melt plastic or burn wood. It's a very hot tool. Why do I like encaustic? In contrast to painting, which you have to wait until it dries, and you can finish the work later. Encaustic hardens as soon as you apply the paint. Wax gets hard very quickly, especially in a cold room. While you transfer the wax to the canvas, it immediately solidifies. So you have to work quickly and precisely, and it gives the same satisfaction that a surfer gets. The wave comes, you control it, and you, being in this wave, glide in the stream of creative state. Our contemporaries knew about this technique only from written descriptions in manuscripts. It was possible to meet the description of the impression made by the works created in the technique of encaustic. The artist depicted the flower so realistically that even the bee sat on the picture because the flower is drawn in a wonderful way. And physical evidence of an artistic technique that existed in ancient times was found in the Egyptian locality of Fayum. The mummies in the ancient burial chamber had wooden boards in their heads. On these boards were portraits of people. Scientists have determined that these portraits were painted while these people were still alive. The colors used to paint them were based on wax. The paints have retained their color and saturation. I have now heated the wax and melted it on this base. The wax melted and sealed the surface, and here the base material is canvas. Now it will not be affected by any external influence. So encaustic is a technique for creating a timeless work. After the discovery of the Fayum portrait, research was conducted in the collections of world museums that the vases had a wax coating, ceramic, stone and ironwork. For me, the sustainability of creating a painting is very important. What does that mean? I won't paint a painting when I'm in a bad mood. When I'm in a negative mood, I can do collages. But I can only do encaustic painting when I'm in a positive mood. This emotional mood seems to be transferred to the work itself and fixed in the wax. I ask the viewers of my exhibitions, what kind of feeling do you get from a painting? The audience begins to narrate what I have transmitted to him through the wax. That is, the wax takes on the energy information of the creator of the painting. This is the uniqueness of this material. Let's talk about the materials I use for encaustic painting. Among my tools I have a hot frying pan in which food is usually cooked, and I've adapted it specifically to keep the wax for the brushes heated. The brushes here are different and there should be a separated brush for each paint. This is to keep each color clean. What am I going to do now? Now the surface is covered with a simple medium of wax and dama resin, and I've warmed it up with a gas burner. I'm going to show you this. I'm now heating the wax to a liquid state. When heated, it will reach into the pores of the material. The jet of fire can be adjusted by the size of the burner nozzle, so that it can be small, large, or even flat. The main thing at this stage of work, so that the entire base of the painting is soaked in hot wax. I need to wait until the hot layer of wax cools down and continue working with wax paints with more refined colors. I take the orange color and will work in strokes. When the wax is heated, then it spreads over the surface. I can work with this paint like a watercolor. You can create a liquid transparent layer. And when the wax is half hardened, I can create the volume of the stroke. Now I'm going to add a little bit of the color white. Now we can add shadows. I'm going to use the color green. When you're just starting to learn this technique, you should not forget to warm up each layer. That is, the layers should be applied sequentially one another. But for certain purposes, I can wear one layer on another without warming it out. Here's what I do. I've applied all the spots of color, and now I'm going to use a squeegee. When the top layer is pulled off, the color of the previous layer becomes visible. The wax that comes off the surface can be used later to primer the background. I'll also add a little more of the cooler tone paint. What I need to do now is to make the wax spread like melted butter. I need to now melt away the hard lines that are left by the brush and squeegee. Now I'm going to mix the colors that I put in here. As I mix them, the wax will start to move. It's a dangerous technique. You have to be brave to use it. We're dealing with fire and hot wax, but I've never been burned. Before the wax layer sets, I'll add color. It should be noted that it's not always possible to make a piece according to a predetermined plan. This technique is so unpredictable in the realization of the idea and willful that it often determines what the result will be, because you are watching the fire control the colors in its own way and the artist follows it. You try to control the painting and it tells you, no, let's have you paint this way. And something incomprehensible, completely spontaneous happens. If you look now at the surface of the work, you can decide your next steps. You can see the relief here. You can make it smoother by warming up the wax, or you can make it even more three-dimensional. It is impossible to say yet what the end result will be. I'm just catching a wave, trying to find harmony among the spots of color that are scattered chaotically across the canvas of the painting. The understanding of the concept will come later, and then I will put a point. Now I will melt carefully with a small fire so as not to spoil what I already like. You can work with fire like a brush, with different planes. You can work with a fragment of the image point by point. You can take a narrow part of the fire and heat a certain area. See, my frozen wax creates such a volume texture. To do this, I make such a movement with a hot brush, cooling it down. When the wax on the brush becomes thick, and then I add it to the relief on the canvas. When you work with the encaustic technique, it has a therapeutic effect on you with a variety of sensations. There are tactile sensations, temperature, and smell. The wax smelled pleasant here. I had a spring theme when thawing through the snow. And it was necessary to create the texture of snow. Ideas are born according to the mood. Sometimes I want to paint something light, to relax, giving myself over to the elements of this technique. Simple still lifes are the result. I have my own personal signature stamp. There is a rune, which means happiness. It is such a wish to all buyers of my paintings. That happiness went to the house from all sides. Encaustic is good because you can use any materials with it, preferably natural ones. I have a series with wire, with photos, with everything that can be imprinted into wax, and it will become part of the image. The series is done in the 2021 the year. It was such a reflection. You can't say what this series is about, but you can say it's about my emotional state. These flowers here were made even earlier. I was in a joyful mood and I wanted to do this kind of work. When I started encaustic painting, I didn't do such large works as I do now. I mastered the technique with small canvas sizes and smaller tools. Our wonderful artist Andrei Ten advised me to make large works. I increased my tool park. I bought a builder's dryer and I was happy with this fact. Just as a woman is happy to buy a new fur coat in g.Hабаровsк, I walked happy from the builder's dryer store with an encaustic dryer. I bought a Philips iron without a steamer. In these large works, the background is created with the iron. I just as chaotically scatter the stains across the canvas of the painting and then mix it all up with a hot iron. It creates these textures. This was also done with an iron. This painting is about output, about a certain state of reflection. I love this painting very much. You can see from my example that it is possible to learn such a difficult technique as encaustic, but it is a long way. First of all, the colors. I make these myself. I have not seen where they are sold, even on the internet. It is easier for a person who wants to start doing encaustic to come to my workshop, to watch, to try with his own hands on my tools. I thank everyone who came to my masterclass now, and I'm especially grateful to Tatiana, the owner of this small g.Hабаровsк art gallery List.